Welcome to the luncheon today, and we're just so pleased to have such a great turnout for today's session on Democrats and Republicans and politics in Marin and beyond. So welcome to today's session. My name is Susan Kirsch. I'm the Vice President of the Marin Coalition. As it turns out, I've been filling in for Craig Yates, who's the President of the Marin Coalition, who has been out with injury, really since probably January. I think he's been out all the time. So for those of you who know Craig and would like to send him good wishes, there's a card back with Marie, back by the coffee, if any of you would like to sign and send Craig good wishes. And what he sent today, asking to be shared and conveyed with all of you, is a quote from Edith Wharton, where the quote is, "There are two ways of spreading light, to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it." So we'll just look to have lots of light coming into today's session and looking at all the issues of politics. So I want to announce and thank the people who have become members both last January and now in today's session. So welcome to new members George Buckle, Leslie Peterson-Schwarz, Renee Summer, and today new members Phil Richardson, John Karzanowski, Carla Condon, Ray Law, and John Glossinger. So a big round of applause for people who joined. Welcome. If any of the rest of you would like to become members, we're really gaining some traction here for Marin Coalition, bringing you noontime programs on topics that are really important for how we're thinking about issues in Marin County. So, and you know what, I realized, I did this last time too. I'm officially calling this meeting to order. Okay, the meeting is called to order. And our primary piece of business is that we need a motion to approve the minutes of the January meeting. So would someone make that motion? Eva, Marie, for your minutes. And a second, Eleanor. Okay, so we've got that piece of business taken care of. New business, I would...
Excuse me, we have to call for the question, we have to vote.
Oh, and a call for the question, thank you. Okay, and all those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Okay, thank you. It's approved. Thank you, Frida. We've got this great program today, and we also have a great program coming up in March. And I'd like to invite Dennis Welch to come up to just give you a little overview of what's coming up in our March Coalition Luncheon. Right up to the left side.
Thank you. Next month is March 5th is the next meeting, and we're going to have Krista Gabriel from North Marin Water District and Krishna Kumar from the Marin Municipal Water District here. And I don't need to tell you what they'll be talking about. Anyway, so you have a whole month to think up some tough questions, and I think the emphasis should be on what the long-term solutions are to our water problems here in Marin. So anyway, whether it's desal or more storage or what. So anyway, think them up, and we can have a good meeting next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. So Dennis is the program host for next month. I'm the host for this month's meeting, and am also the host for the event that we have in April. So just to give you a heads up about the April event as well, we're going to be looking at the Marin Community Alliance lawsuit against the Board of Supervisors General Plan and Housing Element. So, knowing we're kind of embroiled with so many issues around growth and development, that's another topic that you might want to put that date on your calendar, April 2nd, to be here for that. Okay, in terms of opportunity, one of the things that we're looking for with the Marin Coalition is a volunteer who could work with us on our website. So if you, or maybe looking at this crowd, if you or a son or daughter or someone is available to give us a hand with the website, please see either me or Carol Brandt, who did registration at the beginning after this meeting. The Marin Coalition is growing. I mean, this, just as a show of hands, how many of you like this new space? Can we just kind of see? Okay, yeah, it seems to be working really well. I think when we started out today, we had a record 79 people registered for the luncheon today, and so we still have another table. A big improvement over the fact that at Chalet Basque, which was wonderful and treated us so well, we had a maximum capacity of 54, so this is a nice expansion. And a lot of this is because of the great work that the Marin Coalition Board is doing. So if you're a member of the Marin Coalition Board, would you just raise your hand and let people at your table recognize you? Raise your hand or stand as board members. And thank you so much for that. I want to do a thank you to Stephen Nessel, who's videotaping our event today. And we plan to post it on Facebook for the Marin Coalition and YouTube, so we'll be getting information out as well. So typically, for those of you who have come to Marin Coalition meetings in the past, you might remember that we usually pass the microphone all through the audience. So when we considered doing that today, we said, oh, no, that's not going to work. So in the next 10 minutes or so, all of you are invited just at your tables. Please take time to introduce yourself, your city, organizations that you're involved in, and just to kind of talk about whatever's on your mind, but to try to make sure you get around the whole table to do introductions at your table. The entrees will be served soon, so we're going to have about a 10-minute break, and then I'll be back up here to introduce our speakers for the day and get the rest of the program started. So, welcome, enjoy the luncheon, and I'll be back in 10 minutes. And as I said to each of them, I'm hardly going to do justice to all of the credentials and all the things that they've done, but instead just give short introductions for each one of them. First of all, I'm going to introduce all three of them, and then I'm going to turn the microphone over to Paul Cohen, who will get us started with about a 5-minute overview of what he sees as what's happening with the Democrats. He'll pass the microphone to Kevin, who will give us about 5 minutes of overview of what's happening among the Republicans. And then Dick Spotswood will take over, handing the mic to do some interview, conversational kinds of things for about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for Q&A with this audience. So our good fortune is that we've got Paul Cohen representing, he's the chair of the Marin Democratic Central Committee and has been in that position since 2008, and just has a long, long history of public service, as all three of these men do. Paul has served on the San Rafael City Council, served for 16 years, and also has served on the San Rafael School Board for 6 years. For 26 years, he was the director of Public and Government Relations for the Northern California Carpenters Regional Council, and has more recently set out on his own to be the principal of PM Cohen Public Affairs, managing political campaigns and ballot measures. So, and had a really successful round this last election. So, congratulations on that. He's a graduate of Tamil Pius High School, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, but in his spare time, he's doing the ultimate self-defense studio workouts. So, and lives in San Rafael. Watch him. Kevin Krick is in a comparable position. He's the chair of the Republican Central Committee. He started with the committee in 2008, and since 2010 has been the chair of that group. He is also on the Bay Area Regional, he's the VP for the Bay Area Regional Group and serves as the State Party's Board on the State Party's Board of Directors. Kevin's background is in maritime industry. He's a graduate of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and sailed in the U.S. Merchant Marine as an officer for 6 years. President George W. Bush appointed him special assistant to the administrator for the U.S. Maritime Administration in the Department of Transportation, where he was working with policy and leadership in that group. Currently, Kevin is Senior Director for Security and Environment for APL. APL was formerly known as the American President Line. He works in Oakland, And what he's doing is overseeing the logistics of 150 container ships and 7 container terminals in the Pacific to make sure that all of us are staying safe and the environment is being protected. In his spare time, he also is on the executive board for the Marin Council of Boy Scouts of America and lives in Fairfax. So, and our moderator for today, when we get to the moderator part of the program, is Dick Spotswood, and we all know Dick as the militant centrist, the columnist for the IJ, our favorite read on a Wednesday or a Sunday, or at least for some of us, our favorite read most of the time. In addition to his writing, he's an attorney for personal a personal injury attorney, and like the other speakers in terms of a long history of public service. Dick spent 12 years on the Mill Valley City Council, including 3 years as mayor. For 10 years, he was the director of the Golden Gate Bridge District. He's former president of Mill Valley Rotary and the Mountain Play Association, and is currently a senior correspondent for KRCB television, the Channel 22 television station. So, please join me in welcoming all 3 of our guests, and I'm going to turn the microphone over then to Paul Cohen for his opening comments. The State of Marin Democrats and Republicans.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I believe it's the 3rd time that I've been invited to address the Marin Coalition, so my previous attempts might not have been too terrible. I'll do my best not to bore you to tears today. I want to clarify a couple things in my introduction. First of all, although I did represent the Carpenters Union for over 20 years, I didn't spend 20 years as the Director of Government Relations. I did spend over a decade in that position before leaving to start my own firm. And just to clarify, I do hold a black belt in the Shaolin Kempo style of martial arts. So I want to start by reading you a bit of the mission statement from the California Democratic Party. Democrats are building a healthier future for our state, improving the quality of life for all Californians. We believe our state must make university and community college affordable for today's working and middle-class families. We believe in rewarding hard work and expanding opportunities for all Californians in order to create stronger and healthier communities. But you didn't ask me to come today to talk about the California Democratic Party, but rather about the Marin Democratic Party. And our mission statement is that we provide leadership to advance and strengthen those principles and values of the Democratic Party. And we do that by electing Democrats, advocating for issues, and increasing community involvement. So we talk about, and we focus a lot of our efforts on that electing Democrats part in local, state, and national elections. Now, it's no surprise to anybody here to tell you that Marin is a very blue county. We have some other statistics that make us stand out as well. First of all, on the blue part, the latest count is 54% of registered voters in Marin are members of the Democratic Party. That makes Marin 3rd highest in the state, behind only Alameda and San Francisco in percentage of Democratic registered voters. In addition, turnout in November of 2012, always presidential elections, generally speaking, are of course the high water mark, but turnout in Marin in 2012 was remarkable. 87.4% of registered voters turned out to vote, which was the highest by county in the state of California. So one of the things that we look at, and by the way, about 80% of eligible voters in Marin are registered to vote as well. So one of the things that we look at in terms of our efforts in Marin County is that voter participation is not an issue. It falls off a little bit in a gubernatorial election like we're heading into, but in 2010, turnout was at 76% and still the 4th highest in the state. So over 3/4 of registered voters in 2010 when we had a contested gubernatorial election, turned out to vote. Maybe slightly lower this time unless the governor's race shapes up to be more of a contest, but we'll see how that goes. So we've chosen to focus our efforts on sort of projecting that blue quality of Marin around the state and the nation wherever we can by helping candidates in contested races, legislative districts around the state, both through volunteerism and through fundraising, by generating volunteers to turn out in large numbers to work on both statewide and national elections. So our major focus through each election cycle is to open a headquarters, provide a place for volunteers to participate in politics, and to staff that for 3 months leading up to the general election. We've done that in the 3 election cycles since I've been chair of the party, and to give you an example of the kind of growth that we've experienced in doing that, our headquarters in 2008 ended up totaling 3,000 square feet. In 2010, we took a 5,000 square foot space, and in 2012, we took an entire building totaling 13,000 square feet, and the last month of the campaign, my job was primarily full-time negotiating conflicts between campaigns that wanted to use the space because there was that much demand for it. So we feel like we've done well. Okay, sorry about that. We've also been working on fundraising. We now hold 3 events per year that raise thousands of dollars. We just completed a crab feed. We have a brew fest in the summer and an annual dinner in the fall. Recent keynote speakers include Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, now a Marin County resident, Senate President Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg last fall, and most recently last month at our crab feed, Speaker of the Assembly John Pettis. Our local endorsements in 2013, we had 13 of our endorsed candidates who won and 5 who fell short. Not a bad record, well above the 54% registered to vote. About 75% of our endorsed candidates won. We're looking to maintain or increase that number, and part of our recently conducted strategic plan update is a more robust endorsement process and more assistance for our endorsed candidates. We're proud of the fact that with a Democratic governor and a supermajority in both houses of the legislature, Democrats have delivered an on-time, balanced budget for 3 years in a row. Under Governor Brown's leadership, we're investing more in education, restoring funding to critical social programs, and tackling the challenge of historic debt. We look forward to continued success in 2014, re-electing Governor Brown, electing Democrats in every state constitutional office and in every legislative office representing Marin County. Note the presence of 2 candidates for the Marin Board of Supervisors are here today, Damon Connolly, Tony Schroyer. And I'm pleased to point out that of the 4 announced candidates for the Marin County Board of Supervisors in this upcoming election, all 4 are members of the Democratic Party. While it will make our endorsement process a little more challenging, we're confident that a Democrat will represent each of those districts after the elections. That concludes my remarks.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, Susan, and everyone else for having me here today. This is the first time I've been invited to speak before you, and I'm very pleased to be here. We're close enough to the golf course where we can say that, you know, what's the old adage? A bad day on the course is better than a good day at work, so very happy to be here. Just a couple of quick clarifications to my bio. Thank you so much for running through all that. I thought I should give you a little insight as to the board of directors reference that Susan made with regard to the California Republican Party. So I'm a dual-hatted person here. I'm the chair of the Marin GOP, but then I sit on the board of directors for the state party as the vice chair for the Bay Area, and the California Republican Party defines the Bay Area as the counties of Marin, Alameda, Contra Costa, Santa Clara, San Mateo, and San Francisco. So that's the area that I represent there. So when we get into some of the questions that I know Dick's got teed up, some of them are relating to state issues, so I'll be happy to chime in with some of that as well. Rounding out my maritime experience, which you will see kind of folds into a lot of what we do here, is I also happen to be a weekend warrior. I am a captain in the U.S. Navy Reserve, so I spend a lot of time shuttling around, dealing mostly with, again, merchant vessels. So the U.S. has a fleet of commercial oriented vessels to move cargo for the military, and that's sort of my role there. With regards to being from Fairfax, there's also 3 other people that are in Fairfax with me. My wife, Natasha, she's a public school teacher at White Hill Middle School. She teaches math. And I've got 2 sons, Miles and Caleb, in 8th and 6th grade respectively, who also happen to go to White Hill. So it makes the commute for them quite easy when you just hop in the car with mom, or all ride your bicycles down the street. So it works out pretty well. I am not originally from Marin. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but when I finished up my time in the Bush administration, I was offered a job with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. Sorry, not the Pacific Maritime Association. PMSA is the other group that we work closely with. But PMA represents all the employer interests in collective bargaining with the ILWU, the longshoremen. So I see when Paul was going through his credentials there, it sounds like we've been on the opposite side of the table, figuratively speaking. I took a little bit different approach to my remarks here for opening up. I figured I would give all of you sort of an inside window as to how the Marin GOP is shaped and what we do just on the very ground level, and then some more the more detailed stuff I'll save for when we go through some of the questions. But suffice to say, the Marin GOP, we represent the interests of the Marin Republican Party, or the Republican Party here in Marin. And there are 22 members of us that are elected or appointed. So out of the 5 districts we've got in Marin, used to be every 2 years, now it's every 4 years because we've only got a partisan election every 4 years. We go up on the ballot, depending on the size of the district, is how many representatives we have from each, and you're elected if it's an equal number of folks looking for jobs on the central committee and slots that are open. There's no election, save some money on the ballot, and you just put in there. If there is a challenge race, you get elected into office, and then for those seats, when somebody leaves or moves or whatnot, we have the power to appoint people to fill those slots. And I'm proud to say that we have a full committee. It's great to actually have all 22 of those seats filled. We also have 3 additional seats that they call ex officio, and those are for our candidates who ran for Congress, State Senate, and Assembly. So they've got all the rights and responsibilities as a regular member as well. And we hold our meetings once a month on the last Thursday of the month, typically at Jason's down there in Greenbrae, right at the end of Sir Francis Drake by 101. And meet at about 7, we'll run to about 8:30 or so. And everybody's welcome. A couple of things that we do when we have our meetings, they're usually, the usual business type stuff, go through the treasurer's report, that sort of thing. But we also focus on what we're going to do for the plans we've got for the Marin Republican Party. And we've got 58 elected Republicans here in Marin, so that's one of our key areas that we focus in on, are getting Republicans elected. We've got about 28,000 registered Republicans, and that represents approximately 18% of the voter pool. So speaking of candidates, of those 3 ex officio type slots, we actually are privileged to have 2 of those candidates here. Oop, I think the battery just went out. Let's see. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. 2 of those candidates here today. We've got for Assembly, Gregory Allen is running for Assembly, and Larry No Sweat Wiesner, that's his new nickname, running for Senate. For Congress, there's a fellow up in Redway, Dale Mensing, who we'll meet later. That's up in Humboldt. We'll meet him later this month when he comes down to visit us. But in and amongst all that, to make their campaigns successful, we need volunteers. So we coordinate the volunteer efforts for the party, and then they have their own volunteer groups as well too, and we kind of work them together. Much like Paul said, you're deconflicting a lot of the candidates' interests and who wants to volunteer and who needs the assistance. So that's our job. We try and allocate for everyone. And then fundraising. So obviously we can't support what we do without fundraising, and our 2 big fundraisers each year are our Lincoln Dinner in the spring, and this year we're looking at May. Most likely is going to be Senator Andy Vidak, who, as many of you recall, he was elected down in Fresno in a district that they did not expect a Republican to be elected. It was a great victory for our newly elected chairman for the state party, Jim Brulte. And then at Christmas time, we have a very low-key, kind of relaxed party. This year we did it down at the old Dollar Mansion in the Falkirk in San Rafael, which was great because for me, being a part of APL, American President Lines, Dollar Lines was our predecessor shipping company, so it was a nice little connection there. But our key top priority for this year, and I would be remiss, and I think Tony would hang me if I did not mention it, is term limits, supervisor term limits, term limits, term limits, term limits. I have with me a sheet for people to sign if you're interested in getting that on the ballot, and I can talk more about that. And if I don't, Tony will hunt you down. So thank you all very much. I look forward to your questions and look forward to meeting you all.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here. Always good to be at the Marin Coalition. I spent too much time as an elected official without not following the old tradition of introducing elected officials here. From the Cohen-Democratic Council, Carla Condon is here. Damon has already been mentioned. Damon Conley is a member of the San Rafael Council, and our new Marin Community College Director, Trustee, Grady Beavis is here. So I just want to give them a recognition. I'm always in awe of any group that can go from Greg Allen, the Republican candidate for Assembly, to Greg Brockbank, the former councilman from San Rafael. That covers the Marin reasonable spectrum. There are folks out further either out there, but that's the reasonable. And that's kind of why we're here today, is that this county is blessed, unlike perhaps the nation and the state, with two really fine gentlemen who serve as their party's respective chair. I know both of them. I actually accidentally introduced them both at breakfast at San Rafael one morning, because that's just how it works in Marin County, which is great. And that means that you can have a civil discussion with each of them, and those of us who don't belong to either party. And I would point out that the second largest gathering of political people in this county are us declined to state independent voters. So we kind of look at you guys and say, tell us what you have to offer us. We'll see which way we go. And with the new top two system, which I'm going to be asking about, that's ever more relevant. Susan asked me to do something and really to kind of have a conversation during our question periods, rather than blank questions, answer up or down. We might go back and forth a little bit. We did this at the Mill Valley City Council Candidates Day, sponsored by the Friends in Mill Valley, which worked out very well. And it was less formal. It was a more chance to interact a little bit. So I've got a few questions I'm going to ask and discuss with them. Then we're going to open up to Q&A from you folks. But first I'm going to start with Kevin. Kevin, your party, as you said, has 18% of the registered voters in Marin County. It's a blue county, though there's a lot of declining states. How do you handle that? And how do you handle that specifically in the context of California's new top two electoral system? Kevin, you want to come up here and, or maybe we can go back and forth or how we do it?
Yeah, we try this. If it doesn't work, we'll make a change. But yes, you are correct. We are third in the county in terms of registration, after the no party preference folks, who are about 22% of the vote, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's a big challenge for us. And what we focus in on is not so much the voter registration. Obviously, we want to get that up. But in order to do that, part and parcel is providing a product, if you will, that the voters want. Just like Dick had said, they look to the two parties and say, well, what have you got for me? So we've made some significant strides over the past year in broadening our appeal to folks in Marin. And there's some evidence here that's already showing that it's working. In November, the election, we had 75% of the Republicans that ran were elected, which was an astounding number, showing that we were starting to resonate with the folks here in Marin in a much more aggressive fashion. And in terms of general voter satisfaction, we've been reaching out, and the term limits piece that I mentioned stemmed from an initiative we took on where we did a poll of just voters in general, not Republicans, just voters overall, and we got some very good statistically significant returns on that, as well as a great return just in general for such a survey, and that led to our focus on term limits. So We've got initiatives in place. We're keeping up our fundraising efforts and supporting our candidates. But this is how we want to sort of turn the tide, if you will, to make ourselves more relevant to the average voter. Now, as that applies to the top two side of things, that does change the dynamics, and it's actually worked in our favor with regard to raising the stature of Republicans. As many of you recall, the last assembly race, Mark Levine approached us after the primary, and it was the Democrat versus Democrat, and he said, look, I'm running to represent Marin, not to represent the Democrats, can I come talk to your folks? And I said, well, before we throw you to the lions here, let's have a little chat as to what you're interested in, and pension reform came up, and that was key for our constituents in the Republican Party. So he approached us, and we worked very hard to support him going into the general election, and that threw him over the top. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So it showed that as a bloc, the Republicans are still a very significant player here in Marin, and with this top two system, we will probably see more and more of that as we go forward.
Paul, the Democrats face the opposite situation, perhaps too much riches in a way. 54% of the registered voters, a number of independents might tend to lean Democratic. That means that when you have a race, like the coming assembly race, or the past assembly race, or the congressional race, a block of Democrats. How does the Marin Democratic Party deal with that and deal with the new top two political system?
I think you're right. We have somewhat of an embarrassment of riches. It does on issues. It drives us as the Marin Democratic Party to have a big tent. I think we'll probably get in later to some local issues, and we recognize a range of opinion even within our central committee, but certainly within the party and those who might choose to vote with the party even though there's no party preference in the registration, and we want to be open and welcoming to everyone. With respect to the top two, it certainly is one of our challenges. There's a level at which I'm pleased that you look at the assembly race and the only candidates really competitive were both Democrats. So I think that speaks well of the Democratic Party's appeal broadly within Marin County. As far as endorsements go, I'll just comment, we work much the same as Kevin laid out in terms of the structure. We're both governed by laws of the state of California in terms of how the party is structured. On endorsements, when it comes to what used to be partisan offices, or maybe they're not quite as partisan now because of the top two. You don't have a partisan primary, the top two candidates go on, but we still adhere to an endorsement process that follows the guidelines of the California Democratic Party. So this coming weekend, delegates from each region are going to gather or are going to submit votes by mail or email for party endorsements in each of those races. And what will be interesting to see is what happens. There will be races where no one will get an endorsement, and we'll see who comes out after the first round. Can't really call it primary anymore, but after the first round in June, we'll see who comes out, and the party will still look to see if there's only one Democrat there. They may revisit the endorsement. An interesting question, frankly, is whether or not in the assembly race now with two other Democrats having filed to seek the party's endorsement, the candidate that you recently mentioned, Dick, I don't believe, Veronica Jacoby, I don't believe that she submitted the paperwork.
She hasn't yet.
She could conceivably by Saturday and still try to get some endorsement votes. It'll be an interesting question to see whether or not Assemblymember Levine gets the party endorsement at this point, gets it at the state convention. He is certainly actively pursuing that. My prediction is that he will get it, if not this weekend. He'll get it at the state party convention coming up next month in Los Angeles. Incumbents, I recognize that Assemblymember Levine did a very good job of reaching across the aisle. I think all of us want to see more of that in terms of governing. But he has worked with many of his Democratic colleagues. He's an active participant in the Democratic caucus, and he is actively seeking to run as the Democratic nominee for office. So I think the challenge comes in the top two. My job is to try to help people understand that elections are temporary. Governing, we want to be a little bit more permanent, and so to encourage Democrats not to make it personal when they endorse one candidate or another, as long as ultimately we as a party elect Democrats in those offices, I'm going to consider it a victory.
Kevin and Paul, what are your respectively local parties doing to attract those of us who don't have a political affiliation or independence?
You know, we've done some issue forums. We had, I mentioned earlier, a recent strategic planning session. We are talking about doing some more of that. You know, it is interesting when you look at what makes up independent voters, and they are not, you know, with all due respect, they're not all militant centrists. So it's not, I don't think you can, you should not look at no party preference voters and assume that they stand in the center on a spectrum between two parties. I think actually, so I do a lot of work professionally on understanding voter motivation and behavior, and if you look at results in blue counties, and then you look at results in red counties. I mean, Barack Obama way outperformed the Democratic registration in Marin County. I'll bet you there are so-called red counties in California where President Obama underperformed Democratic registration, let alone attracting significant numbers of those no party preference voters. So people, no party preference voters often tend to look much like their neighbors. They're just not persuaded by sheer partisanship. And I think that's a mistake some candidates make. I think I might point to that as a mistake in the recent assembly race. It's not enough just to sort of go the old way and talk about we're this party and you've got to toe the party line and just do sort of what the party says because we know better. And we're really trying to open up, like I said, and have a big tent. And that's how I think we're going to continue to attract voters to support our candidates.
Kevin, what are you guys doing to get us on your side?
Sure. I mean, you know, just like Paul said, you can't consider the no party preference folks to have a specific you know, spot right in the middle of the spectrum. You know, there are a lot of reasons for it. Most of which I think is that you know, folks don't want to be engaged in that that political party type of issue. Where, you know, they think they'll get less mail, less phone calls, you name it. But they, you know, but they still make up a very significant portion of the vote, and it's up to both parties, you know, to put their best foot forward in order to show what they've got to offer as a product. So to that end, you know, what Marin's been doing is, you know, we've taken, like I said, we took some steps last year to, you know, broaden our appeal, and then we went out and wanted to find out of that group, now that you know, we're showing that we want to be more relevant, of the group that's out there, be it Democrats, Republicans, Green Party, you know, Independents, American Independents, you know, no party preference, whomever, what are the issues that are important to you? And you know, after we got those back, we realized, okay, we can actually make a go here of making a difference for the majority of people in Marin, regardless of political affiliation. It's something that, you know, that they want, something that they really want, and that particular issue happened to be term limits. Our polling was very good in that regard, and we've seen that bipartisan support. I mean, this isn't the term limits isn't a Republican initiative. It's clearly a bipartisan initiative. You know, like I mentioned Tony earlier, she's probably got the lead on getting the most number of signatures, and you know, she's in the blue camp. So it shows, you know, we're working for the benefit of Marin as a whole, not for a specific political party. But you know, it's the job of the political parties to get their candidates elected. But to do so, you know, you have to offer something that the voters want, as well as you know, making some progress once you've put in an initiative or a candidate.
Thanks, Kevin and Paul. I've lived in the county since 1976, and before that, ever since I was born, was here a lot. Since '76, every election seems to revolve around issues of development and growth. That's when you want to open the newspaper and get people riled up. They're going to have a position one way or the other on that issue. Where is the Marin Republican Party on these issues, including Planned Bay Area, Senate Bill 1, the whole issue that's been developed around housing of some sort.
Sure. Let me start off by getting a feel for the room here. So how many people here are homeowners? Can you raise your hands? And of those hands that are up, how many of you believe that in private property? Good chunk. So that kind of tees up where we are with Planned Bay Area. The Republican Party in all 9 counties surrounding the Bay, the 6 I mentioned plus Napa, Sonoma, and Solano, are adamantly opposed to Planned Bay Area. Now, I think it's important to realize we're not opposed to the idea of improving transportation to get around through the Bay Area. That is notwithstanding. I mean, we want to be able to move from point A to point B in the most efficient manner and do it effectively. What we are disappointed with is that Planned Bay Area took a golden opportunity to do just that, improve transportation for us all, and used it and morphed it into a social experiment. And a social experiment that unfortunately hinges upon private property rights being stripped in order to create very dense housing corridors and changing the face and the makeup of specific wall counties. So what plays in Marin, though, doesn't necessarily fit what would work in Contra Costa or Alameda or San Francisco. And Marin has been very much so, and I'm sure Dick's visits to Marin before he moved here involved us spending a lot of time outdoors. And we have been very militant as a county in protecting our open space. And for the government to come in and try and reshape Marin into something it's not is just abhorrent. I mean, we should be focused on what works for our county, and we should have the rights to be able to do what we want to do to make that happen. Yes, we should work in conjunction with our fellow counties to improve transportation, but we don't have to do that by changing the mere fabric of the actual county.
Paul?
So I have a slightly different take on some of these issues that shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. I do want to point out that I'm here representing the Marin Democratic Party. So while I'm happy at some point to share personal thoughts, I'm going to try to lay out for you how I think the party looks at these issues. We strongly support the concept of affordable housing. One of the things that the Democratic Party believes, while we believe in the importance of free market and market forces, we recognize that that doesn't always produce an equitable outcome, and government has a role in mitigating the harshest impacts of the market. And that extends to the price of housing and to maintaining, I think many of my fellow Democrats would agree, a somewhat diverse community. Marin is already less diverse. We're mostly a lot older than many of the other counties around the Bay. We're one of the oldest counties in the state, and maybe in the nation. But we think it's important to try to maintain a diverse community to the greatest extent possible. That being said, we have not, as a Marin Democratic Party, voted to take a stand on Planned Bay Area. I can assure you that there is a wide variety, back to that big tent that I mentioned, there's a range of opinions on the issue within my central committee, let alone within my party. I will mention to you, so we have, as Kevin told you how central committees are structured, we have representatives that are elected within each supervisorial district. 2 of my central committee members are here today and allow me to point out the range of opinions expressed. Susan Kirsch, who you all know, is a leader in Citizen Marin that has raised a lot of the questions about the Planned Bay Area and its impact on Marin County. And Greg Brockbank, and I don't want to mischaracterize Greg, but as a raging advocate for Planned Bay Area, because I haven't really heard that many people in Marin take that position. But during the recent city council race, Greg was probably the clearest voice suggesting that the San Rafael City Council should go slow on eliminating the priority development area in Terra Linda. Pretty broad range of opinions there. And then we also have an elected member of our Central Committee, Frank Egger, who's raised a lot of really good resourced questions that ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, has been resoundingly silent on. We're in the middle of a historic drought. Where are we going to get the water to accept the kind of housing numbers that they are projecting. I will push back a little bit on some of the rhetoric, because this notion that it's government that's the enemy, I think, is misplaced. I think ABAG has mishandled this almost from start to finish. I think they are attempting to deal with a legitimate issue, which is California is projected to grow. How are we going to handle that growth? Where is that growth going to occur? I think the way they've done it has been abysmal. But now I've lived in Marin County for 50 years. And I love spending time in open space, hiking, and just enjoying this wonderful place. It is a wonderful place because government stepped, to a certain extent, on private property rights by implementing A60 zoning and the corridor concept for development in Marin County. We did that about 40 years ago. And we said, we're going to preserve as much of West Marin from development as possible, and we're going to take away development rights in order to do that, and we're going to focus development along the 101 corridor. Personally, I think this is a lot of what the conflict that Marin is currently having with ABAG, because we have already done what they are encouraging the region to do. We have focused development close to transportation, but they're not recognizing that, and they're trying to sort of shoehorn more development in what we've already established as a development corridor at a level that we're comfortable with. I commend our Democratic Assembly member, Mark Levine, for his bill that will lower the density levels that ABAG is attempting to impose on Marin from metropolitan, which I think is absurd, to a suburban pattern of development at 20 units per acre, much like Sonoma and Napa, and I think that will make a lot of sense.
Doesn't it tell you that if we had Kevin and Paul put in a room together, we could resolve this whole issue? Unfortunately, they're not the two guys in the room, but it would be better if they were. Let's do some questions from the audience. Susan?
Okay, how about I'll take
Great.
this microphone,
Okay.
and you guys have to share that.
All
And
right.
so I'll just start over here. We'll try to get we won't have time to hit everybody, but Toby.
Oh, thank you,
It's
Susan.
not a stand, just so we're going to hear us, you're better. And just to say, short questions.
Hi, I'm Jody Morales with CSPP. I have a question for both of you. It is regarding pension reform, of course, and it has to do with the READ initiative, otherwise known as the Pension Reform Act of 2014. And I'd like your opinion about it being on the ballot and what you would do to support it if it is on the ballot. Thank you.
Let's start with Paul.
Thank you. So I want to, again, clarify something on the resume and respond to something that Kevin said. I'll go back to what we said. I spent over 20 years as a member, first working at the trade and then representing my fellow carpenters as a representative of the Carpenters Union. It's important to understand this distinction. The Carpenters Union is a private sector union. Our employers can and do go bankrupt. And so a successful union, like the Carpenters, recognizes management as a partner and a mutual interest in success. So, I mean, it is entirely possible to sort of bargain yourself out of a competitive position, and that makes no sense. It's also possible to put together a pension plan that is going to collapse. That doesn't do the retirees or the sponsors of the plan any good at all. So my union, over the last decade, has reduced benefits and increased contributions. I was part of a group of leadership in Northern California that went around and met with members and laid the choices out for them and said, what do you want? What are the benefits that you think are key that you want to keep? And what are you willing to pay for that? And are you willing to forego a wage increase and put that money into the pension? I was stunned. They've gotten better at this, but I was stunned during that process to stumble into a conversation with a representative of a public employee union who said, you pay for your pension? We need to get to a place, and I think there's been tremendous progress in this. I don't know that they've come far enough. We need to get to a place where public employees understand that pensions are a cost item, and it has to be seen. And every body that I've served on, I have pushed, you have to look at this concept of total compensation. You can't just say, okay, we pay the wages and this other stuff is just stuff we get. No, it's what does it cost now and in the future? As far as the READ initiative goes, there are aspects of that I'm interested in. I think that there are some ways that it was drafted that cause me concern, but we're going to have to deal with how public pensions are structured. There's just no question about it. There's been good strides, and I commend Governor Brown for the work that he's done. The conversation is far from over. And I'll just tell you, I'll end with this, which is a little bit of insight into what my union did, which is that instead of saying a pension is just worth X amount every year you work, or it's worth some multiplier of the last 3 years you work, you get a pension credit for each year you work, which is based on the contribution that year and the return on investment in that year. And then you add up the value of each of those years. Some years it's higher, some years it's lower, even if you worked more hours. But you add up the benefit of all those years when you retire, and the money's already there because you've fluctuated not only with the hours worked and the contribution rate, but the return on investment as you've gone. And that's what a lot of private pension programs that are still in existence are doing. That may be a way out.
Kevin.
Thank you. So, going back to what Paul had said about the negotiating process, my old job was with PMA, and like I said, we did the negotiations with the Longshore Union, the ILWU, and we were an employer association, and just like Paul's employers, any one of us could, any one of our members could go bankrupt, at any point in time. So henceforth, it was always critical in these 6 years contracts that would come up with a way forward that allowed the companies to still retain profits, but also ensuring that the people that actually enable the cargo to get off the ship and get out the gate to everyone were able to continue working. So the longshoremen, they did something which I thought was probably one of the best decisions the ILWU ever made when they broke away from the ILA, which is the East Coast Union, decades ago. They turned control of the pension program over to the Employers Association. Having it sit in the union hands, they felt was too much temptation, and we've seen a lot of shenanigans with the ILA over the years, with golden parachutes for union officials, etc. So they have been very successful as a union in terms of being able to look forward and have a good pension. But that's based on the fact that the employers recognize that there's a level of contribution that needs to go in there, and the employers realize that they need to make a profit. What we're facing on the county side is something completely different. We've got elected officials who view this as they're detached from that profit income. If the county of Marin goes belly up, which it's already well in debt, there's no direct effect on them like there would be if you were the president of a shipping line and you managed to give away the ship and for lack of for a good maritime term there. There's no accountability. So we were looking at a county total retiree related debt, I think of somewhere like in the neighborhood of $860 million. I mean, it's just ridiculous. That's not to say that people who work for the county are not deserving of a pension. That's an important component of any job. But the responsibility is upon our elected officials to ensure that this is a sustainable way forward. So from the Marin Republican Party perspective, any proposal that's put forward that achieves that sustainability for a pension perspective is something we would definitely support.
Okay, next question. You had a question?
Yes. Hi, I'm Jim Snyder. Let's take Jody's comment about pension reform. This is going to have to do with, the whole thing is going to have to do with education and how you educate your potential candidates. The Pew Research Institute came out with a study in the last few weeks that said that California, pardon me, swallow this chicken. California is 46th in education, 46th in employment issues concerning employment, 50th, we're on the bottom of the barrel when it comes to small business climate, and we're number 1 when it comes to poverty. So if you take those four, add pension reform to it in California and throughout, what do you do to educate your candidates on these subjects? I'm sure there's a lot more that you do, but what do you actually do? What do you go through to get them prepared, if you do anything in that regard?
We started last time first with Paul, this time Kevin.
Sure. What we do is apply a lot of the the lessons that have been learned over the years and help educate our candidates. From my perspective, I've seen this, I've lived this. As Susan said, I work for APL, used to be American President Lines. For over 160 years, they were headquartered here in the Bay Area. Anybody want to take a guess as to where one of the world's largest container shipping companies is located today? Arizona. On the Salt River. We moved our America's headquarters from the Bay to Arizona just for the reasons you cited. On the education front, I see that every day. I don't think a day goes by where my wife and I don't have that discussion. She's in the trenches doing her best to provide a high quality level of education in math to her students. And for the most part, her students have been very successful despite the lack of resources that are put forward and despite the lack of what you want to say, an attractive climate for teachers. A lot of times people like to villainize teachers and teachers unions, and yes, the teachers unions I think have gone well beyond their role of protecting their members' interests and shifted into a lot of political strategy there as opposed to just protecting the teachers. But nevertheless, the problem that California faces is that it's just not very attractive to be a teacher. If you go to Singapore, for example, they're one of the highest paid professions in the country, and their scores show it. The resources just aren't there, and there's this constant fight at the very low level to make that happen. And unfortunately, that gets caught up in the budget fight every year. There's very little of the budget that the governor has the ability to control. So when everything else is earmarked off from the proposition after proposition after proposition, so when it comes down to it, when the governor needs money, what does he do? He turns to the state of California and its residents and says, oh my God, won't someone think of the children? And they slice off the education budget and then demand a tax increase to offset it. It's just not a sustainable way forward in order to get an education system that we are deserving of, so that we can create that next generation of small business owners and large business owners that want to stay here and create a climate that is acceptable and welcoming to business, as opposed to driving them out to places like Arizona and Texas.
Paul.
So, Dick, you might be right. Maybe you put Kevin and I in a room where we could solve a lot of these problems. I think we agree on the need to invest in education. I want to clarify, as we mentioned, I'm a school board member. So I want to clarify a couple things for you, though. First of all, under Proposition 98, 40% of the state's general fund budget must be spent on education. So there's already a baseline. Part of the problem, I think, is that we have not figured out how to have a stable tax base in California, and therefore the amount going to education each year just fluctuates directly with the economy, except that the number of children that we have to educate and the number of teachers that we have to employ does not fluctuate. And so we really need to figure out a different way to fund education. The other thing that we face in education is that not all students come to us equally prepared. That through no fault of their own. And the next Steve Jobs might be among those students who are learning English at the same time they're learning their subject material. And in the land of opportunity, we have an obligation to do our best to prepare them to be successful. Not to guarantee success, but to do our best to prepare them to take advantage of opportunity. And we're not doing a good job of that. We're not doing a sufficient job of that. I really commend Governor Brown for the new education formula, and I urge you all to pay a lot of attention to how this goes forward, because we are putting more money into education, and we're doing it in a different way, recognizing that the old way has not necessarily been working very well. So I encourage you all to keep up with that. I will push back a little bit, though, on this notion of California as a failed state, which was somewhat implied in the question, and Kevin certainly picked up on it. I'm sorry that your shipping company left California. The fact is, most of the venture capital investment in the United States is in California. The fact is that Silicon Valley remains and is currently booming, not as a bubble, but as a steady growth, as the technology center of not just California, not just the United States, but the world. You look at the patents generated out of Silicon Valley, look at what was referenced earlier, look at the debate raging in San Francisco over the impact of success. Now, these are technology companies that could go anywhere. Yes, it's odd to hear a shipping company is based in Arizona, but a technology company would make perfect sense. They could easily be in Arizona or China, for that matter. And they are based here. California is driving the knowledge-based economy. So we're doing something right.
Susan, I think we have time for one more.
I think one more. So, you know, I'm going to go over to this side of the room just to give a little balance here. So, let's see.
Is there a right wing and left wing in the?
Greg, I see your hand
I'd like to drill a little deeper on the statistical analysis that, Kevin, you mentioned as to the relative appeal of both parties. Full disclosure, I am Paul's predecessor as the chair of the Marin Democratic Party. But for 15 or 20 years, I've been doing completely nonpartisan lists of all the candidates, their name, address, phone number, email address, whenever it's available, and the political party in a format that's much more readable than the information you can get online from the county registrar. And you said that 75% of people in the Republicans in the recent election won. Of the 35 candidates for city council, only 3, my statistical analysis, which I do every election, including trends, show that there are fewer and fewer new Republicans running and fewer new Republicans winning. Of the 35 candidates running for city council, only 3 were Republicans, 2 were from Tiburon. And, yes, the question is, and the one who in a contested race, which won, happens to be sitting right next to me, is one of 3 longtime incumbents who won easily. The other dozen or so, probably in school board races and special district races, mostly longtime incumbents. Of the 4 who lost, probably out of the dozen total, I would suspect that they were new Republicans which lost. So I'm not sure what you meant by, and perhaps you can clarify when you say you think Republicans are resonating well because 75% of them won.
Sure, I guess this is a question just for me.
Paul would say, yeah, that's right.
Well, before I jump on that, I do want to say, since we're wrapping up there, that you know, I was very pleased as we would pass the microphone back and forth to hear the similar focus on these different issues, and the realization, as Dick pointed out, that you know, if we were to sit down and be put in a room together to figure these things out. We're understanding of both sides of the issue, and you know, I think we've got a good, both have a good understanding of what it is that needs to be done in order to make things happen. We may have a slightly different approach, but I think it's you know, it bodes well, if you will. Back to your question, yeah, you know, we had 12 Republicans run, and of that 12, 9 of them were elected, and I think you know, that's just the statistic in and of itself. From prior elections that we've had, whenever we run, whatever pool might be, the percentage number has always been, you know, lower than that. So it was nice to see a trend that, you know, we were able to have our Republicans get out there and be able to chat with the no party preference folks and result in an election where we had 75% of the people who ran won. That's all. Very plain and simple.
Thanks, Kevin. We do try to keep pretty good tabs, and there's an awful lot of good questions out there I know coming. First of all, once again, I told you folks when I started that these were two excellent people. I told you folks these were 2 excellent people. And I have to remark that with our county, people forget, it's been a while, I don't forget, Paul Cohen ran for the Board of Supervisors, and unfortunately lost when he ran, and so sometimes there's talent out there you don't think, you know, you should go past. Kevin is a delight because he's new to this chairmanship, and it's great to see younger, newer Republicans kind of revitalizing the party. So, you know, well, you two guys don't agree on everything. You shouldn't. You're in different parties. But you're at a level where you can talk to the other side and actually start to work things out. And it just seems to me, as an observer, that you're taking a leadership role that maybe perhaps people outside this county should emulate. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Paul, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you to both of the panelists. You know, we do have a little token of appreciation for your being here. Let's see, Frida, do I need a formal vote of a motion to adjourn this meeting? No formal motion. Officially, we are adjourned. Though, thank you all so much for coming today. So sorry we didn't get a chance to just have more time for questions. I know you've got great questions around here, but please stick around and continue to talk to your colleagues who are here. and come back and join us next month for the session about water.
Yeah, I think you can think of us as Tim O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, so come on up and chat.